Alright fam, let's dive into this wild moment on GB News. So, Christopher Hope, the political editor, straight up asks Keir Starmer, "Are you gaslighting voters?" Like that's not even a question. It's an accusation with a question. Mark, let me set the scene for you. Energy bills are going up. Council tax is rising. Rail fares? Yup, up again. And all of that's happening next week. Meanwhile, Starmer's out here telling people they'll be £500 better off. Bro, how? Watch this video. Keir Starmer, Britain's most persistent PowerPoint presentation in human form, continues to reassure the nation that salvation isn't just coming, it's already here, and you're £500 richer. You just haven't noticed yet. Maybe check under the sofa. While global tensions rise.
Chris, over to you, News. Prime Minister, Russia's today warning of a direct conflict with NATO if your coalition, the willing, puts troops on the ground in Ukraine. Will you give MPs a vote on your plan before that happens? And if I can quickly ask about the spring statement yesterday, you told us that we'll be £500 better off from the spring statement, but just next week, energy bills go up, council tax bills go up, water bills, broadband bills, TV licence, rail fares go up, plus national insurance for employers, plus freeze of income tax thresholds. £500 won't touch the sides of what's facing your voters next week. Are you gaslighting them? And what's your message to them about the cost of living crisis?
Let me take I think ended up being three parts of your question, Chris, but fair enough. Look, in terms of what Russia says, we know what Russia wants. It wants a defenceless Ukraine. So it doesn't surprise me that Russia's saying their position is Ukraine shouldn't have any capability of its own or any assistance or help from anybody else. That rather gives away their opening stance on this, and that can't guide us in our response. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves with a vote because we're not at that stage. We are at the stage of turning the political momentum into operational plans, looking at the various options, and then going for the next piece of work with the Chiefs of Defence. But you know my long-standing position, which is if we were to deploy in any scenario on a long-term basis, then of course Parliament should have a say in that, and I don't deflect from that. Look, on the people being £500 better off, it's not me saying that, it's the OBR, and that is really important because we said that we would improve living standards under a Labour government, and that is what the OBR says we are doing. And obviously their calculation takes into account other factors. That is materially different to the last 14 years. If there's one thing above all else that singles out the last 14 years under the Tory government, it's that it was the biggest downgrading and reduction in living standards in generations. So that is really important, and of course alongside that interest rates are coming down. If people are on mortgages, that makes a material difference. Wages are up higher than prices, so in terms of what people feel in their pockets, that's a really important measure. And of course for those on the lowest income, that's 3 million people, they will have that hike in the minimum wage. So what we're doing is, in answer to your question, securing our economy, taking the decisions that are necessary, seeing that impacted in the OBR's assessment that people will be £500 better off, so living standards will go up, very important. But at the same time, because of the investment we made in the NHS and others, we've seen 2 million additional appointments in the NHS. We said we would do that in the first year of a Labour government. We've done it in 7 months. For 5 months, waiting lists have come down, even during the winter. So I think we can be clear that the decisions we made in the budget were the right decisions. They were tough, but they were right, and you can see now some of the effects of them.
As with Russia, NATO warnings, and Ukraine teetering on the edge, Starmer calmly reminds us he's not the drama. No, the real enemy is inconvenient facts and the occasional rail fare hike. As Vladimir Putin eyes a defenseless Ukraine, Starmer's eyes are firmly fixed on polling numbers, determined to out-moderate a boiled potato in both flavor and consistency. Somehow, this lukewarm lasagna of leadership insists we're witnessing a renaissance. Wages are rising, interest rates are dropping, the NHS is healing, and birds are probably singing in harmony all in 6 months. Not bad for a man whose main political skill seems to be not being the Tories. According to the OPER, or as it's known, the official Bureau of Relative Optimism, living standards have apparently risen. Sure, you might feel broke, cold, and confused, but Keir wants you to know that's just residual Tory trauma. Under Labour, you're thriving now. Spiritually, the numbers say so. His strategy? Simple. Take 14 years of conservative wreckage, sweep it under a red carpet, and declare the house fixed because the doorbell works again. Don't ask about the kitchen fire. Look, a new NHS appointment slot. In short, Keir Starmer is the political equivalent of being told your phone's on 10% battery. But don't worry, it's optimized for performance. You don't know how or why, but hey, at least it's not completely dead. If politics were theater, Starmer would be the guy playing both the lead and the stage manager, insisting the curtains open only once everyone has signed the appropriate risk assessments. This week, our ever-measured prime minister strutted across the global stage, blasting Vladimir Putin as not a serious player, a stinging critique that would surely devastate any playground chess club, but might struggle to phase an autocrat currently shelling power plants. Nevertheless, Starmer declared Putin's promises hollow, which is the diplomatic equivalent of calling someone a bit dodgy on cry watch. But don't worry, Starmer had a plan, a deadline for peace. Except it's not a hot deadline, more like a soft deadline. A squishy deadliner, maybe -in-days- or -weeks- but definitely -not -months -unless -it -is deadline. A shrink says you watch deadline. Simultaneously firm and non-committal until observed by a journalist. Meanwhile, in Paris, Sir Keir joined forces with Macron and Zelensky for a stroll, proving that nothing says military strategy like a Wakantalk with a photo op. Starmer then announced a triumphant coalition of the willing, 30 countries, NATO, the EU, and presumably anyone who are SVPD, to the Google Calendar invite. British military planners were also dispatched to draw up operational plans, though hopefully, with fewer spreadsheets than usual. In what felt like a moment stolen from a West Wing reboot, Starmer proclaimed peace through strength, strength through clarity, and clarity through incredibly vague press briefings. He firmly committed to more support for Ukraine. Absolutely no lifting of sanctions, at least. Not before the parliamentary vote is scheduled and the weather in Paris clears up. Starmer's unique political magic lies in his ability to look like he's just solved a Rubik's Cube with his eyes while actually holding a Sudoku puzzle upside down. He speaks the language of decisiveness while carefully avoiding any actual decisions. A masterclass in what it sounds like when a man promises war plans without scaring the Waitrose demographic. And yet, in spite of the ambiguity, President Zelensky stood beside him and said, "Keir said all the outcomes that are very important for us," which, frankly, is as glowing as it gets when your country is being shelled and you're hoping Britain brought more than strongly worded objectives. In closing, Keir Starmer is the political version of setting a calendar reminder labeled "Do Something About Putin, TBC." He's rallied a coalition, promised action, and offered his full support. Just as soon as the paperwork is filed, the parliamentary vote is scheduled, and the weather in Paris clears up. At long last, Britain has found its wartime leader, sensible, polite, impeccably vague, and always ready to hold a summit. Just don't ask him to define as long as it takes.